Cate Blanchett is here. In 2005, she won an Academy Award for her portrayal of Katharine Hepburn in Martin Scorsese's The Aviator. This season, she appears in 3 films. Alejandro Inarritu's Babel with Brad Pitt, Steven Soderbergh's A Good German with George Clooney, and Sir Richard Gere's Notes of a Scandal with Dame Judi Dench. Here is a look at all 3 of these movies.
You don't think I tried?
Never going to forgive me, will you?
You know what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to argue.
Okay. You just let me know when you're ready to argue.
You know what Batman did?
Everybody knows who he is. He was famous before the war. Now, you can either tell me or you can tell Bernie. He'll be here in 2 minutes.
No.
What was Tully selling that was worth so much money? Some sort of rocket secret?
No.
Lena.
How the rockets were built.
That was in this box? How they were built? Lena, please.
Oh, please, I tried to end it, honestly. I just couldn't.
I risked everything for you, and in return, you humiliate me.
No, I didn't mean to upset you, Bob. Please. I need your help more than ever. Bob, please don't do it like this.
You promised to end it. Why didn't you?
Because I...
What? You're in love?
I am pleased to welcome Cate Blanchett back to this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Been an incredible year, hasn't it?
It has. It has. I mean, it's been an incredible year for a lot of people, but for me to have gone working with, from Alejandro to working alongside Judi to working on this amazing endeavour by Steven Soderbergh it's pretty phenomenal.
You choose them because you like directors and you want to work with directors more than anything else?
I suppose so. I mean, in the end, it's kind of an irrational instinct that drives the decision. But with Notes on a Scandal, it was definitely the chance to work with Judi that clinched it for me. I'd read the novel, but then a lot of interesting novels make terrible films. And so when I heard that Patrick Marber was doing the screenplay, he's not a writer who shies away from the unpalatable sides of people.
Did screenplay for Closer as well?
Yes. I mean, he deals with really difficult, painful and abhorrent emotions. And I think Notes on a Scandal, he does it with a great sense of black humour.
Notes of a Scandal is about a relationship between you, a teacher, and a young student. But in fact, it's a relationship about 2 women.
It's very... the salacious aspect of it is obviously the sex with a minor. But I think that's it's just a catalyst, really, for this really unsavoury friendship, if you can call it, that develops over this scandal, the secret that Barbara Covert latches onto.
What do they both need?
Oh, God, the eternal question. They're desperately, desperately lonely, I think, at the end of the day. And I think in a way...
Even though your character's married to Bill
Nye. I mean, what a fool. What a fool. Maybe that's why I found it so hard to understand. How could you cheat on Bill Nye?
With a kid that's a teacher, that's a student in your school. And
it's something that is really beyond my comprehension. And maybe...
You never understood why she would do it.
Why? No. Why anyone who's 35 would go out with a 20-year-old? I don't even understand that. What do you talk about? So for me, once they open their mouths and it's not very interesting, it's no amount of physical attraction will overcome
what did you
that.
do to convince us this might have happened?
Well, it does happen.
Of course it does, yes.
It happens repeatedly. And I think it's interesting the way the law deals with women and men in quite different ways. It's always the male, no matter how old, that seems to be the sexual aggressor. And I think I just had to liberate Sheba from my own sense of morality, really. I mean, in the end, you don't want to patronise an audience. And once I understood it as somebody who had never really had an adolescence, who had gone from being a good teenager into being a good wife and trying to do the best thing as a mother, that the desire to sort of combust, I think, was really powerful, and that's the sort of the place that I started from.
Is she moving away from something or towards something?
Well, I think by the end she's moving towards something, and something not at all sentimental. I don't think there's any sense at the end of the film that there's an easy answer once this whole thing has been broken open. But I think she's moving away from being young, actually, at the end of the day. I think we're all so obsessed with our past and our youth, and she's moving perhaps into a more responsible place.
You said about Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench, that she's part of England understanding itself.
Yes, Declan Donnellan, who's part of Cheek by Jowl, said to me about the notion of English cultural tourism is that they will consume Judy because she is literally part of the cultural landscape. She's a given, like Buckingham Palace is a given, that you must, visit and pay homage at the shrine of Dame Dench. And I completely understand it. And she completely understands and accepts, but is irresponsible to that mantle at the same time. I mean, at the minute, she's on stage doing a musical version of The Merry Wives of Windsor.
Yes.
She's sort of unstoppable.
And in Casino Royale as well.
I know, and she moves from various different forms, and the medium of television to film to theatre with such grace and economy. And, I mean, she's hilarious.
So did you learn something you didn't know about acting?
Oh, every frame. I think that she's able to be incredibly emotionally connected, but also witty, and has such an incredible technical facility, but it's never apparent. It just seems very easy. And, she says she doesn't read these things, and she doesn't, but somehow she gets to the core.
Can you tell Richard Gere is a product of theatre in the way he directs film?
Yes. I mean, he loves actors, and he loves the process of rehearsal. And in the end, he's very his focus is the performance. So I think that's and his understanding of script is obviously so well honed, and his respect for the script. So it was really important. He's not somebody. A lot of directors will like the flaws in a script and like to enter with the script almost being deliberately unpolished, so that it's a rough thing that they can hone as they shoot. But Richard was very keen to have the whole thing ironed out.
Let me turn from that to The Good German. Tell me about why that was interesting to you. Again, you got Steven Soderbergh, a director that you like. You've got George Clooney.
I mean, there you go. There's the two reasons.
That's it.
I mean, I said... It was like when Scorsese called and asked me to play Katharine Hepburn. I didn't even hear what he'd asked me to do before I said yes.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's a similar
Cate, I would like for you, and you said yes.
Yes, exactly. And then I realised. And I think this was the case too. I mean, I think what Section 8 have done and its contribution to American filmmaking is remarkable. And I mean, I think the directorial achievement of The Good German is just astonishing, really. The ambitions of the film, I think, are really astonishing.
The ambitions in what way?
I just think to make a hybrid form, really, to use actors with very sort of politically savvy actors like George, to place them in a political context, which is the beginning of the Cold War, and a story told largely from the vanquished perspective of the Second World War, which history never tells. It's always told from the victor's point of view. And I thought, well, that's fascinating, and I expected to be shooting in Romania in colour. And then I found out that we were shooting on the Universal backlot in black and white, using the old cameras.
And how does it change for you if they're using the old cameras?
Well, that wasn't such a change for me, because they made different noises. It was the primary change was in the acting style. That I think when we're so used to receiving war stories with blood and guts realism, and it's almost like we've become desensitised to the politics of that, because we receive so many violent images. And the fact that all of this stuff was suddenly stylised, shot in black and white, I think you attend much more, not only to the visuals, but to the words when you're watching a black and white film.
Here it is, roll tape.
I won't go to the Russians, no. I won't.
He just wants to see you. What's the big deal? He just wants to know I really have him.
But you don't have him.
You're out there selling love you don't have.
Hey, Fish. I had to hitch a ride home from the conference. What happened?
Blow.
I hate to pull rank on you, but you are my driver.
I'm off the clock, sir.
Lena?
I'm off the clock too.
What's she thinking about when she hears his name?
I think when Jake returns, Lena's forced to confront herself. And I think that we can all do terrible things as long as we don't think about who we once were. And I think when she sees him, she realises how much life for her has actually changed. The notions of good and evil, I mean, they're intertwined.
And good and bad, and she can't wait to get out of Germany.
Yes, I think, but in the end...
As some kind of escape.
Well, can one ever escape oneself? I mean, deeds follow you.
Finally, this.
Yes.
Another great director.
An astonishing director. I mean, I think that Babel is really, people say it about a lot of things, but truly a masterwork. And when I think about it, not that the aesthetics are the same and not that he's at all the same director, but when I think about Babel and the loose trilogy that is Amores Perros and 21 Grams, it's akin to the poetic weight of Kieślowski, the sense that it has resonances that reach far beyond the week that you've seen the film.
How is he to work with? How is he different from Soderbergh and...
Oh, chalk and cheese.
Really?
Well, the films are chalk and cheese. I mean, I think that...
Chalk and cheese?
Yeah.
Cheese is good, chalk is...
Well, I don't know, they both are just different.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all about... Because I don't have a lot of text in Babel, and I'm only in a small portion of it. It was all about backstory. It was all very method, very intense. There's a lot of Alejandro invested in the film, and what kills me about the film is seeing the dedication at the end to Maria and his two children. You know, there's so much of him that's intermeshed into the fabric of the film. And with Stephen, I mean, there was no rehearsal. He trusts that the actors are going to do it.
He lets the actors find their way.
He does. I mean, of course he guides them. I mean, he sent us a very specific viewing list.
Here's
of
what you
films
said, though. Alejandro, you said, takes his hand and rams it down your throat.
Pulls your guts up and then shoves them back in. It's true.
This is where we're going.
Yeah, and Stephen is a lot cooler, but incredibly... he's just one of the smartest people I've ever met.
You're going to direct on the stage, or you already have?
My husband, Andrew Upton, and I just directed a double bill at the Sydney Theatre Company. He did a one-act David Mamet
and you
called
did?
Reunion, and I did a Pinter, which Judi Dench had actually originated the role
A Kind
with
of
Peter
Alaska.
Hall. Yeah, A Kind of Alaska.
Yeah. And so does this mean that you want to direct more?
I'd love to. I mean, I had a ball. I mean... it was a great relief, I must say, to not be up there doing it. When we, came to opening night, I went out this door and the actors went out that door.
Is this also a precursor to directing film?
No, I think it's an assumption that every actor not only wants to work in film, but that every director wants to direct film, and it's not. Well, I love film, and if an astonishing one came along and there was a great cinematographer to guide me and a first AD.
Well, that's easy. You can find good cinematography.
Well, it's not a medium
it's
that
a good story you need, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very, very technical, and I think increasingly, unless you have a real guttural understanding of the technicalities of the medium, then you haven't got... It's like if you don't understand space on stage, you can't possibly direct. Because if you've got someone upstage right and someone downstage left, that means something different to whether if you...
Yes.
Whereas I don't know that I necessarily understand that in a frame. I do from an actor's perspective, but from an audience perspective, I don't know that I necessarily understand that in the same way.
In all of this, who's had the most influence on you?
In all of my life?
No, not your life. I mean, I assume your parents and your husband and people like that. But in terms of what you do and your passion for theatre and movies and acting and all of that.
Well, I feel like I've always run away from being an actor.
You have?
Yeah, always. It's not a proper job.
It's not what?
It's not really a proper job.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, when I make films like Babel and The Good German, I think, well, yes, it is. I mean, they're very powerful, potent films. And I think I conceived as a life in the theatre as being something, because you're connected...
More proper, more...
Not proper. I don't have a sense of judgment of the two mediums in that way. I think the two mediums do connect and should interface more often. But I somehow, because you're more connected and culpable for the result of the evening on stage, it always seems that you're sort of irresponsible in film. Well, that's great.
Yeah, but just take the things you have done. I mean, you've done these extraordinary roles, and you've worked with these great directors.
Yeah.
And yet somehow it's not... Is this not satisfying or not what?
Oh, deeply, deeply satisfying. But I think I'm very restless, and I think I'm always looking for the next thing, the next challenge. I mean, I don't see a point in embarking on something unless it seems impossible.
Were these roles impossible?
Yes, they seemed so at the time. In that I thought, where's the entry point for me with Sheba and with The Good German? The style seemed almost impenetrable to me at first. And with Babel, I thought, how am I going to convey all of this that Alejandro wants me to convey without any text?
And not being on screen for that long.
Yeah. But they were exercising very different muscles. But in terms of influences, when I think about someone like Liv Ullmann,
yes.
I mean, I think the Swedes
Just
are
watching
astonishing. Watching her and what she's done as a director, I think Faithless is an extraordinary film. So, I mean, I think the Swedes have been very influential.
And Bergman. And...
I mean, when I think about his films a lot. So.
Yeah. Do you want to teach at all?
Yeah, I did.
You're teaching when you're directing.
Yes
Certainly.
and no. Yes and no. I think I don't perceive myself as ever reaching the stage of being a pedagogue. I think probably the exchange is definitely there as a director. I mean, I like working in a very collaborative way. I mean, there's some directors who can tell you where to stand and where to hold your hands, and you will accept that. And there's some that you just think, no, you're just being, you can't tell me why.
When you look back at this year, do any of these have preference for you?
Oh, God. That's like saying which of your children is
You know, I wouldn't...
I really think Babel is an astonishing film that I'm really proud to be part of. And I think The Good German is, I think, is such an ambitious undertaking. But I'm also very proud to have shared so much screen time with Judy. So it's sort of, I think they're so different, I don't know if I can even compare them.
After you did Hepburn, was Hepburn someone you looked to and said she somehow was able to manage it all and be who she was at the same time as having the career she did?
I don't know if anyone ever manages at all. I think something is always going to atrophy. And not knowing her personally, I can't say. She was very well defended, I think, in a lot of ways.
There's a new biography of her out.
There you go. But it was fantastic when Scorsese screened those films. I think I'd always loved her work, but that's when I deeply appreciated how... I mean, people always said that she was a personality, and you got her personality, which was extraordinary, first and foremost. But I saw how she'd transformed internally by seeing the film screened.
Yeah. She also was, I mean, interesting, and this all comes out in this book, because she was so ambitious on the one hand, and then at the same time so disarming about it all on the other hand. I mean, she had a kind of sort of engine of wanting to be what she became, yet at the same time a kind of, I don't really want this, and, you know, go away.
But I mean, in my small way, I do understand that, because there's a sense of not being able to continue to grow if you've thoroughly embraced people's love of one particular thing that you've done. And so I think the best thing is to remove yourself as much as you can so you can maintain a connection to the world around you. I mean, that's ideally what acting is. It's revealing what it is to be human.
Is that why you began to do it?
I think so. I mean, it was in my third year at drama school. I worked with two astonishing teachers who, I suppose, just impressed upon us as students the fact that it was a generous undertaking. And you can get incredibly infantilized, particularly in the film industry, and sort of operate in a bubble, I think.
Did the Oscar change your life?
Did it change my life?
No, I mean, did all of a sudden scripts came that you might not have had? Did you get more attention than you might not have had? Did you have more power that you might not have had? Did you see better roles than you'd seen before? You know, the whole list of things that might come. Or was it already there?
I think I was a bit nervous about the whole thing, in that you think, oh, well, that's it, I've arrived somewhere, or people will perceive that I've arrived somewhere.
And that's the last thing you wanted?
Yeah, I'm sort of more interested on the journey, always being on the journey to, you know...
Where is it in terms of how much of your talent you think you're reaching into? I mean, are you using what you think Are you operating 50% capacity or 75? Or, I mean, do you feel like you are pushing the edges of your own potential?
I hope so. I mean, I think I'm endlessly disappointed in what I've done. I mean, invariably.
Do you watch it a lot?
No. I mean, I watch it. I like to see it once before I do the looping, so that I know what the whole story is, basically. So if there's anything you want to tweak or suggestions that you want to make about changing a bit here or there or an intonation, suddenly, because it's like when you get a script, you think, right, scene 132 is the turning point, and then once you see the whole thing, which you can do with a theatrical text, but when you see the whole scope of the film, you think, it was scene 97, so it means you might want to revoice a line because suddenly
inflection can change everything.
I think so. Yeah, I'm a big believer in language.
Do you mark up scripts? I mean, what do you do to them when you get them to sort of get inside them?
I usually think, oh God, I'm playing the wrong part. I should be playing that part, invariably. But I think a really interesting exercise for me is to sort of see what other characters say about your character, and it's a great thing I learned
before you start.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing I learned when I was working on Chekhov for the first time. It's the way we perceive ourselves is often very different to who we perhaps might be. And so
do you think people perceive you differently than you are? In a sense, simply because they identify in some way the roles you perform?
It's very difficult to be objective about yourself. And almost impossible to be objective about the final product
Family
of a
helps,
film.
don't they?
Yes, yeah. They tell you who you are.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this.
No,
it's just great to have you here, and what a remarkable year you've had.
I know.
And back to Sydney and theatre and everything else.
Yes, well, Andrew and I have got a lot of work to do.
Are you doing something? What's next for you?
Well, we're taking over as co-artistic directors of the Sydney Theatre Company.
That's 2008.
2008.
Yeah. But aren't you doing? What's the next film for you?
Oh, the next film. I'm working with Mr. Pitt again. My life is so hard.
Yeah.
With
you and Brad are together again?
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
With Mr. Fincher directing. I think it starts off as a short story, an F. Scott Fitzgerald story called The Curious Case of Benjamin
Anything
Button.
surprise you about him as an actor, Brad?
No, no. I think he's. I think he's really flexible and incredibly open, and he has an enormous grace about him, Brad.
He does, and interest and wide interest, architecture and things like that. What George is part of this program that you are on. He's amazing, it seems to me, because he's been able to, in a sense, do everything. You know, to do light entertainment as well as serious things, produce as well as direct. I mean, it's remarkable to see one person, a bit like Clint Eastwood, you know, people who sort of come in at one end and are able to do all the things that...
George is a very rare creature, I think. Rare in the sense that he is incredibly politically astute and very aware of his cachet and using his powers for good.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, by going to Darfur, knowing that people will follow him if he goes.
But doing it in a really... I think the world is so incredibly conservative, and we're in a stranglehold where language, every word we choose, language is a weapon. That's where Pinter knows it all. And I think George also knows that, and so he chooses his words incredibly carefully, and his timing is impeccable.
Thank you again.